Hello all. Thank you, Mr. Shetty. I think you laid a very nice framework for me to take forward. I'm going to talk about narrow AI, what he was discussing about, in the context of how we are using AI for diabetic retinopathy at Ravindran Hospital. Just 10 minutes, not more than that. What's a need for that? The current process, challenges, and how we are deploying AI in the clinical practice as of now. Okay, so this is a pretty alarming slide. You could see 12% of our population is known to be diabetic. And diabetic is something, it's a lifestyle disease which is easily controlled if you could detect early. So that's where we are trying to do. What we should do, probably use eye as a screening tool for diabetic patients. Why? Because eye gives the first symptoms of severe in diabetes. DR is a very common cause of blindness. Screening DR is today an ophthalmologist's job, but we are trying to see how do we go beyond an ophthalmologist and get into a very physician or clinical area. So that's one of the alternative resources we are using. Screening done by a physician at the clinic or one of the PHCs using a fundus camera, then using telemedicine, you could actually get the state of diabetics and its severities. I'm going to talk about what's happening right now and what's also we're trying to go to the future. Telemedicine is happening or telescreening happening. A specialist grades the system. He's called a radiologist, ophthalmologist. He looks at a retina and gives opinion. The opinion is sent back. Right now we are contemplating that a specialist could be a deep learning algorithm. We got some success there. Typically what happens in a diabetic clinic, the patient walks in with known history of diabetes. Doctor recommends him a fundus image. The fundus image is transferred to internet. An ophthalmologist sitting in a base hospital with a lot of experience of reading fundus image, looks into the images, gives a report. The report goes back to the diabetic clinic. It takes an approximately 1 hour. We have optimized to be 1 hour now, but it used to be 3 days, 1 day, now it's 1 hour. If there's a finding in the report, the patient is counseled and it's forwarded to an eye clinic for further diagnosis. This is something the base hospital ophthalmology looks into. This is the report that's generally generated. You have a very clear description of eye, diagnosis, treatment, and comments. Currently, it's done by a human. We're going to see how AI is going to replace this. So the recent developments have made things possible. One is the cameras are becoming cheaper, so it's affordable. You can have a camera at the public health center or a diabetic clinic. Internet connections are pretty good, reliable, and it's very secure. And there's a lot of advancements in automated image processing. Trained manpower is something which you could train easily because of various skill sets available. The delay used to be 3 days, now it's going to be reduced. But there are some inconsistencies in grading, and that is a significant risk. I'll talk about it. And there are very clear grading standards available. So these are the grading standards. If anybody wants to go for a DR screening, and an ETDR very clearly says what's normal, what's mild, moderate, severe, and NPDR. This is the inconsistency I'm talking about. If you put 30 ophthalmologists in a room and give them like X number of images, what we figured out is that normals and severe abnormals, people predict almost across the board, they're in kind of common agreement. But when it comes to variations of normal or variations of abnormal, that's where we have a significant difference. We want to see whether AI could play a role and make sure that these variations could be avoided. So adoption of AI in clinical practice. So at Arvind, it's not that we are just starting in a couple of years. We are working on some kind of imaging analysis from 2004. Initially, we did it very primitive to identify red lesions in the fundus image, which is retina, and also identify optic disc. Subsequently, we were able to provide some kind of machine learning algorithm or image processing algorithm to detect something called Duran, which is nothing but a polyps in your retina, which is typically happens in age-related macular degeneration. We also did some work on AI in glaucoma, not just to fundus images using fundus cameras, but also OCTs. OCT is a slightly advanced imaging modality. So this is something which I want to spend more time. So when Google approached us way back in 2013, they had a model which is trained for certain AI, mostly in the Western conditions. So they wanted to test in the Indian standard conditions. So basically, they want to apply deep learning and create algorithm for automated two diseases. One is diabetic retinopathy and DME, diabetic macular edema, using fundus images. So we created a data set since they wanted to have localized of Indian patients. So we had created close to 130,000 images of data, split into two. One is for test data, another is for clinical validation. So Google came out with this IPAX data set, which is open source, available across the internet, and we provide them anonymized Indian patient information. Clinical validation was done for 13,000 patients. We got a very interesting finding from the model. Close to 95% of predictions done by the model, which Google gave at that point in time, was accurate in Indian standard conditions. This is some kind of so it's a small prototype that Google built. The finding it shows, so those two findings are there, DME and DR. Google predicts that from these images, there are a lot of hidden facts that we could predict cardiovascular risk factors. In 2018 April, FDA was kind enough to permit using artificial intelligence in certain eye-related diseases, especially diabetes. Same time, we want to do some kind of real test studies. We call it a prospective observational study. It was for close to 1 year. We took 3,000 patients, and we sampled at 2 sites. So Google, Arvind, and Shankara came together for this prospective study. Outcome is present as a paper. So this is what a workflow is all about. There are 2 locations, center A and center B. The patient goes through a normal clinical workflow that is on the left-hand side, consent, a non-mediatrix fundus image is taken, which is undilated image. Then the patient goes through a dilation, ophthalmologist sees it, and the regular process goes up. The non-mediatrix fundus images is sent to two different processes. One is through automated grading, another is through manual grading. We used very specialized ophthalmologists, general ophthalmologists, or sometimes specialists. We also use trained readers and graders. So we did in 2 centers, and at the other center, we also had some kind of feedback mechanism. 10% of sample data was taken and put back into the system for further analysis. This is what we found. What we found was from these 3 different aspects, like one, the readers or trained graders went through the entire grading process. Specialists called retina specialists went through the grading process, and the model went through, the new model went through the process. We figured out that retina specialists are always better than the trained readers and graders, but the model is comparable with retina specialists. Sometimes in certain areas, it's even better, right? And those 2 sites, Arvind and Shankara, showed the same result. So with that confidence, we went into having AI in the screening area, not in the clinical diagnosis area. It's more in the screening area. There are 2 areas we look at. One is the physician office, where the physician might not have knowledge about DR. So we are trying to upload images, and we're trying to have AI on that. And second thing is, if the ophthalmologist has got a busy practice and he doesn't want to go through complete evaluations fundus, AI could be applied there. What it took 1 hour, AI probably got it around 1 minute. What you have seen in the entire process is that when the system detects a presence of DR, it is not that the system gives an outcome and gives a treatment or diagnosis. It is again sent through some kind of a physician who looks into the report and advises further. So in this case, in Vision Center, they have a remote consultation with one of an ophthalmologist. They look at the report because physically patient is not present, and they advise the patient to go and meet an ophthalmologist or go to a higher hospital for the evaluation. That's what happens. Some of the challenges, ungradability rate is very high because of age, small pupil, and unclear media. Sometimes AI diagnoses on a higher side. If it's normal, it says mild, which clinician practice feel it's fine. Cost of camera is still high, so it can't be massively adopted. Lack of IT systems for complete integration. The AI is just a technology right now. It's not a product that people can just use it off the shelf. We need an IT partners to install that, implement that in a hospital. Finally, to conclude it, we still believe AI is a new electricity. It is going to be a productivity enhancer. It's not going to replace our clinicians. So we always feel AI is a co-worker. It's not a competition for us from a clinical practice. Thank you.